As the details surrounding the horrific mass murder in Las Vegas emerge, the political repercussions and the outing of people who hate God and hate certain Americans is all coming right front and center. We're going to focus on that today because I promise you it impacts you. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance. $100,000. We know that amount was transferred from Stephen Paddock to an account in the Philippines. Now, at the time of this recording, we don't know what bank it went to. We don't know what person it went to. We know that his girlfriend was Filipino and that she left America, went to the Philippines, and is now on her way back. And again, by the time this show airs, she will be in custody and they will be asking her questions. She has been labeled a person of interest, but the original news report said that she was trying to warn people of the impending shooting. We will see more. Let's focus for a moment on the $100,000 in the light of this statement from the Las Vegas sheriff. Play that clip, please.
You heard me say that we're comfortable that we have the suspect in the custody, but something more may come of that investigation. And I want to understand the motivation that you describe, okay, to prevent any future incidents. And, did this person get radicalized unbeknownst to us? And we want to identify that source.
All right. Alex Jones, who is beloved by many people on the right, he's a great source. He has people inside of the government, inside the CIA, inside of the Federal Marshal Service, inside the FBI, who feed him information. He has stated that inside of the room, law enforcement officials found paraphernalia or things or items or writings. He wasn't clear in what he said, but that these things come from Antifa and from the Middle East. That was what he said, the Middle East. Now, ISIS has claimed responsibility for this. Of course, the New York Times is saying that's ludicrous. Maybe it is ludicrous. But when other attacks have happened that were Islamic terror in nature and ISIS was not connected, they don't take credit. So we don't know yet. We're going to see. Now, the reason I'm bringing up these two things at the same time, the 100,000 and ISIS, is simply this. Where did he get the money? The news originally reported that he was gambling $10,000 a day and that he had a deep gambling debt. He was heavily in debt. So where in the world did he get $100,000? That's an even number. Where did he get that money? Now, it is a known fact that ISIS and Al-Qaeda, if my memory is correct, and certain groups inside of Lebanon, I believe it's Hezbollah, but I don't want to be wrong on that one. No, I'm certain that it's Hezbollah, that they will give the murderer, also known as a suicide bomber, they will give the murderer a lump of money ahead of time to give to his family if he carries out an attack. And sometimes there's a bonus. If they're successful, they're assured, the bomber, the murderer is assured that more money will go to the family that he has left behind. So where did this $100,000 come from? We don't know. He was in debt. He was a gambler. He knew that he was about to carry out this murderous attack, and before he did committed the murders and then killed himself, he wired this money to the Philippines. There is a lot of difficulty in the Philippines with Islamic terrorism. We're going to find out, hopefully. Now, here's issue number two, and I know I've got a lot to talk about today, so keep me posted on time. All right, let's be careful on time. I don't want to go over. But we are now at the place where we cannot trust certain elements in federal law enforcement. Now, for example, when the Muslim terrorist murdered all of those innocent people in Orlando, He was a devout Muslim. He was following the rules and the dictates of Islamic war, okay? And he pledged his allegiance to ISIS. The 911 tape was suppressed. There was information in that tape that made Islam look bad. And so federal law enforcement kept it from coming out. So the question that we are going to have to ask ourselves as the days and weeks and even months unfold is, are there elements inside of federal law enforcement that are suppressing information, hiding something from us? We've got to take a break. I'll be right back. Very important stuff about a CBS vice president. Today, many so-called Christian intellectuals believe that the God of evolution used billions of years of death and destruction to evolve the bodies of the first human beings. Then, they simply declare the theory of evolution as fact to justify their unproven scientific fallacies. By the grace of God, more and more Catholics are rejecting this modern-day mythology in favor of the traditional doctrine of creation, as recorded by the Bible and believed and taught by all the fathers and doctors of the church. To find out how sound theology and natural science confirm the sacred history of Genesis, visit the Colby Center for the Study of Creation, and be sure to check out our bookstore, which has titles like I Have Spoken to You from Heaven, A Catholic Defense of Creation in 6 Days, and A Catholic Assessment of Evolutionary Theory. That's the Colby Center for the Study of Creation. The name Haley Geftman Gold is probably unknown to 99.9% of us, at least up until today or yesterday, when she made national news because of her firing. She was a CBS vice president. She is an attorney. She's a graduate of Columbia Law School, which is probably to the left of Satan. That was a joke. She was a vice president at MTV, and she made the following tweet after the murderous attack. If they wouldn't do anything when children were murdered, I have no hope that the repugs will ever do the right thing. I'm actually not even sympathetic, because country music fans often are Republican gun-toters. That statement cost her job. Let's read it again. Put it up there. Let's read it again in slow motion. If they wouldn't do anything when children were murdered, this probably has to do with Sandy Hook or some other school shooting, okay? And when one of these horrific murders happens, people like Hillary Clinton, who jumped on this bandwagon with a stupid statement about silencers, people on the left will jump on it. Always, always, always. And you remember in our last program together, I said, I'm not going to go into the politics of it. I'm just not going to. I knew what was coming, and I could not bring myself to do anything but grieve for the victims and for their families. But while the blood was still drying on the ground, these godless enemies of freedom were already just pounding their drum. We know the script. We could say the script, okay? They were pounding their drum, Hillary, etc. But this godless woman, and I say that with surgical precision, by the way, okay? I'm not making a judgment on her. She judged herself by the content. She said, if they wouldn't do anything when children were murdered, I have no hope that the repugs will ever do the right thing. We have the largest gun supply per capita in the world except for Switzerland, okay? In Switzerland, men, last report at least, able-bodied people are required. Everyone is required to be in the militia, and they're required to have firearms. Switzerland is a very peaceful country. Very few gun crimes there. So we have an enormous amount of firearms. There's no chance ever that any government any political government in this country, even if there was an overthrow of the U.S. government, there's no chance that the guns would be confiscated. There's too many. The cost in human blood, the human toll would be so high if our government ever tried to confiscate our weapons. So, good law-abiding people have the right, God-given right, and the right codified in our Constitution to keep and bear arms. Criminals, villains, demented, demon-possessed men like Stephen Paddock, they also, because of the price of freedom, they have the ability to get guns. And even people who are felons and people who are clinically insane, they're going to get a gun if they want to. If they're just tricky enough and they have the resources, they're going to get a gun. This is the horrific truth that they can do that. And it is the cost of freedom. So, you know, when the Sandy Hook happened, the discussion was, should teachers be armed? Well, they're all armed in Israel. Now our pilots have guns on airplanes. Why is it such a stupid idea, given the state of violence in America and the rise of Islamic terrorism? Why is it a bad idea that the answer, the solution to protecting children in schools is to have trained, sane, law-abiding teachers trained in the use of firearms to protect themselves and the children in their charge? Why is that stupid? I think that what's stupid is to not do that. Because to beat the drum and say that we're going to run around now and take all law-abiding people's guns, that's not going to keep a Sandy Hook from happening. It's not going to keep something like this demonic tragedy in Las Vegas from happening. But I've got more on this woman. Don't go away. Don't go away. Please don't go away. This affects you. Have Muslim terrorists hijacked the peaceful religion of Islam? Or is there more to the story? The answer lies in the life of one man, Muhammad, the founder of Islam. Muslim terrorists see themselves inside a 1,400-year-old story, a narrative that focuses on specific events in the life of Muhammad. We are going to look at Muhammad's life using their most sacred literature. We will look at Muhammad at the Battle of Badr. We'll see him deal with those who mock him. We'll see the times when he used deception. We'll witness Muhammad's anti-Semitism. And yes, we will discuss Muhammad and his teachings concerning sex, slavery, and jihad. Friend, if you want to understand Islamic terrorism, get this series today. Welcome back to the program, friend. Again, the name Haley Geftman Gold. She is a former vice president at CBS. Here's what she said. I continue. I have no hope that the Repugs will ever do the right thing. Now, that's a play on words. Republicans, repugnant. So to her, a person in one of the largest broadcasters on the planet Earth, CBS, a vice president there, calls people who are Republicans repugs. And then she says, I'm actually not even sympathetic, because country music fans are often Republican gun toters. Now, when someone says I'm not sympathetic, they go that far out on a limb. What do you think that she's really thinking? I'm glad it happened to him. Couldn't have happened to a more wretched group of people. They're repugnant to me. I loathe these people. That's what she's saying. But you know what? I don't need to put words in her mouth. What she said was enough to get her fired. CBS issued a statement saying it's highly inappropriate. Highly inappropriate. Let's talk seriously. This is how it impacts you. You know where you work or where you have worked, okay? Every workplace has a culture. Do you understand what I mean by that? There's a culture that goes on there. There's a political culture. There's a religious culture. So and this is, I shouldn't say every place, because that's actually not true. If you work at an auto plant, you're going to have people from both sides of the political aisle working there. But if you're in a church, all right, if you work in a staff of a large church, people's religious beliefs and their politics are going to be very similar. If you work in a small company where the owner of the company is doing the hiring and the firing, you're going to have political beliefs that are very similar. Just the way it is. This is a broadcast company. Broadcasting is proven to have an agenda. Okay, CBS has shown their agenda repeatedly, outrageously, overtly hostile to Republicans. This is a woman, an attorney, who was a vice president at MTV, then became a vice president at CBS. A company the size of CBS has subcultures, little cliques inside of the organization. So when she sat down for the interview to get this vice presidency, who do you know? Oh, I know that person. Oh, we used to go drink together. Oh, I went to school with so-and-so. Yeah. Yeah, can you believe that the Republicans, can you believe what Donald Trump has done? There's this culture. You throw out little phrases to see where someone is at. Throw out little phrases, and then people get more and more comfortable, and they recognize this is the culture. And you've heard people talk about leaving SNL or various media outlets, MTV or whatever, because the culture was so hostile to good people or good ethics or to Christianity or to Republicans. I mean, people who are in Hollywood who admit to being a Republican oftentimes don't get any more good acting jobs, or they're banished from certain circles. It's happening right now. It's happening with the Chinese trying to buy up various companies. So Richard Gere talked about it recently. He can't get big money roles anymore because of the influence of China in Hollywood, and because he has spoken out so forcefully against Chinese oppression of Tibetan monks. Sorry for that rabbit trail, but the point is this. This is a woman who felt so comfortable with her hatred that calling Republicans repugnant that she posted it on Facebook. I misspoke earlier. I said it was a tweet. This was on Facebook. That's the level of hatred that she had for country music loving Republican gun toters. But she would have said it with a very elitist air about her, maybe a New York City or a Boston accent. They're elitist, and they hate what we stand for. They hate what we stand for. We are repugnant to them. So much so that when dozens of people at a country music concert were murdered in cold blood, she had the gall, she had the brazenness, because of her culture, because of how comfortable she felt hating us, she had the brazenness to post, quote, "I'm actually not even sympathetic," because country music fans often are Republican gun toters. And you know what? She's right. She's right. That's who we are, proudly clinging to our Bible and our guns. And she hates that part of the American experiment in self-government. She hates what we stand for. And she's a former vice president at CBS. She could not have gotten to the place she was in CBS unless she had that culture. That's how this impacts you. We can't trust certain elements inside of our federal law enforcement, and we can't trust CBS because they hate us. They're not going to cover this news accurately. They're not. When is the last time you saw CBS accurately report on the life of Muhammad, the founder of Islam? There you have it, okay? The sheriff of Las Vegas said he was radicalized, and we're looking to see what happened. $100,000 transfer. Where did he get the money? They're going to try and whitewash this just like they tried to whitewash Orlando. And maybe they'll get away with it. But friends, you need to understand that the hostility that she is showing to those concert goers is hostility towards those of you who are regular viewers of this program. I'll be right back. What Would Mohammed Do? Islamic Terrorism Explained is the best movie series documentary ever produced
on the life of Muhammad and Islam. How do I know? Because it's what critics are saying. John Moore, radio host and author, said, "I learned more from what would Muhammad do about Islam and Islamic terrorism than I've learned from everything I ever read and watched in my entire life." Best-selling author Dr. Bill Warner said, "What Would Muhammad Do is the best movie series, TV production on the life of Muhammad and Islamic terrorism that has ever been produced." Friends, this is what the experts are saying. No one has ever done what we've done. I encourage you to get 1, 2, 4 copies. Call 304-289-3700. That's 304-289-3700, or order it at the address or the website that you see on the screen. Friend, we have a series that will help you and those you love to have an impact on this country. It's called Insurrecta Nex. That's Latin for revolution against the killing of innocent people. This is the history, the philosophy, and the theology of social revolution in America. We look at the Stamp Act, the Boston Tea Party, the abolition of slavery, the abolition of child labor, women's voting rights, the civil rights movement. All of them have this in common: courage, sacrifice, dedication, and in-your-face tactics and rhetoric. That's one of the reasons that we've been losing the culture wars the last 40 years, is because the bad guys are using these tactics and we aren't. We will send you this 14-part TV series along with these manuals for students, a teacher's facilitator guide for only $40. Go to 304-289-3700, 304-289-3700.
I would be doing you a disservice if I did not at least discuss the fact that Hillary put out tweets blasting the NRA, time to stand up to the NRA, while the blood was still wet, while people are still in serious condition in the hospital. She's running for president again. Don't kid yourself. Okay? She may, due to her own health issues or due to people inside of the party browbeating her back, she may not be able to do it. But she's running. Don't kid yourself. So she sees this moment, and that's the type of people we're dealing with. You have to remember that. And I'm going to say this because it has to be said, and it's hard to say during a time like this. You know, the reporters went after President Trump's press secretary. Well, is President Trump going to tighten gun laws? And the person said, it's, you know, something we can discuss, but this isn't the time. This shows how callous they are, but it also shows that events like this are always not just ethical, not always just human, but there is a political element to it. And we have the right given to us by God to keep and bear arms. We don't have the right to nuclear weapons. Okay? You don't have the right to have your own nuclear weapon. By virtue of the fact that it's not for self-defense. You don't need a nuclear weapon to defend yourself. A nuclear weapon is an offensive weapon, or it's a weapon meant to turn an entire nation in its direction. God does not give individuals the right to turn an entire nation unless that person is the leader of that nation. Okay? That's why in the hierarchy that God established, that we see in the scriptures and we see in Christian church theology, why we see the idea of a hierarchy. But at the bottom of that hierarchy, if you will, on the civic side, we all have the right to defend ourselves. We all do. It's God-given. And that means, obviously, when the scriptures were being written, they had spears, and they had bows and arrows, and they had horses, and they had knives, and they had swords. And everyone had the right to have one. And a sign of oppression was when the Philistines had confiscated all the weapons from the Jews. And then they required the Jews go to a Philistine blacksmith to sharpen their farming implements. Okay? So that was a very long way of saying, and I hate even bringing it up because of the pain and the heartache that's going on right now. But we have the right to have guns, friends. And a horrifying, murderous act like this does not take that right from us. Okay? You don't lose your rights because someone else broke the law and committed mass murder. And we have to be willing to say that and hold that line during a tragedy like this, as difficult as it is emotionally. It's still the truth. God bless you. Have a good weekend.